we're going to have Tuba. She's an Afghan, a third-year student here at UC-Berkeley, studying molecular and cell biology. She's a member of the Afghan for Peace and will be speaking on Afghan refugees in Iran.
Hi everybody. I'm going to be talking about Afghan refugees in Iran. So Afghan and Iranian relations began in 1935. Afghanistan shares a long and intertwined history with Iran. There are deep ties in language, its people, and culture. Despite such close ties, Afghanistan's relations with Iran have fluctuated in modern times, namely due to the control of the country by the Taliban in the 1990s. And with periodic disputes over the water rights of the Helmand River. So as you can see, Afghanistan and Iran share over 580 miles of border area. So the attitude toward Afghan refugees in Iran, they're seen as kind of like a burden. People say that it's time for them to go back to Afghanistan. There are concerns over increased drug smuggling and violence on the border. And the refugees, like 20 years later, they're no longer seen as interesting victims of a godless communism, which is the reason why they first initially came into Iran. The reality is that Afghans provide much of the needed labor in agriculture and in the construction industry. There's both subtle and overt discrimination against them, and at times harassment. Little or no compensation is paid when workers in the construction sector are killed or disabled in accidents. There are informed reports that have suggested increased use of drugs to sustain the long and hard working days that they have to endure. Afghan refugees themselves state that they no longer feel that they are welcome in Iran. So here's a table showing refugee and asylum seekers in Iran. As you can see, the highest percentage are people from Afghanistan. So it's close to 1 million Afghans that are seeking refugee status, but there are still over 1 million undocumented Afghans in Iran. So the Iran refugee policy is administered by the Iranian Ministry of Interior's Bureau for Aliens and Foreign Immigrant Affairs. So pre-1992, Afghans who fled to Iran during the Soviet invasion of 1979 were issued blue cards. So what a blue card was is it identified them as involuntary migrants, not refugees. Therefore, they were granted temporary legal status. The card that they were issued had no expiration date. So with this card, they're entitled to subsidized health care, free primary and secondary education, and other social services. But after the Soviets left Afghanistan in 1992, the government stopped issuing these cards and has since confiscated some, leaving many Afghans without legal status. So post-1992, the Afghans who fled to Iran were issued temporary residency cards. But unlike the blue cards, these cards had an expiration date in 1996. So after that, they were deemed illegal and subject to deportation. So the number of Afghans who hold employee identity cards is relatively small. In 1998, the Iranian government issued less than 8,000 cards. Afghans only received 4.2% of them. They have not been issued in recent years. And even with the card, there come stipulations such as you're only limited to a specific 16 jobs, mainly labor. So what does it mean to be undocumented in Iran? You have no legal rights, you have lack of access to healthcare, employment, or education benefits granted to documented refugees. And on top of that, Iranian women who marry Afghan men lose their Iranian citizenship. So here's some statistics about school children in Afghan school children in Iran. So in Iran, education is free for its citizens, but 400,000 Afghan children are deprived of an education. The other 100,000 Afghans are able to go to school, so 80% of the children are deprived. So what's required to go to school is, for the Afghans, is 150,000 toman for tuition, which is a really large sum for the Afghan refugees to pay. Also, the schools ask for a card to taradut, which literally means a card for people in transit. So in order to get that card, they have to pay for it, and on top of that, the government doesn't want to readily issue it to the Afghans because if they do, there's no more cheap labor from them. Also, if they issue them the card, then they have to be held responsible for them and their well-being, which they don't want. They don't want that responsibility. So here's just a comparison between Iraqi refugees and Afghan refugees. Iraqi children are able to enroll in Iranian primary and secondary schools without paying fees, but Afghan children must pay tuition unless their parents hold ID cards. So what they have for Afghan children is Afghans have some self-run schools, but many others are taught at home. The government in most cases says that even these are illegal, but in 2009, the Minister of Education said all Afghan students, legal and illegal, can enroll in school. But then a couple months later, they said no, it's illegal, and expelled all of them. So work or education. So the way the system's set up is that Afghans, even if they could go to school, their families need them. They have to stay home. They have to work. Most of them are poor, so they have to support their families. And the way it is that most of the Afghans are illegal workers, and so they get paid very little. So they have to work long, hard days, and therefore can't go to school. But there is hope. There are many children's rights organizations in Iran. One collected 5,000 signatures and sent it to parliament asking them to let Afghan kids go to school. Also, there's an organization called Jahane Shaiste Kodak. I think I said it right, I don't know. So it literally means a world worthy for children. So this organization worked in accordance with the treaty, the International Treaty for Children's Rights, which the government of Iran signed, along with 183 other countries. But I guess they don't follow it because the government shut down this organization because they're helping Afghan children get an education.